All right. Welcome to the Unfazed, Unedited podcast, where we provide commentary on complicated topics in an uncomplicated format. I'm Dr. Shauna Payne Gold, and I go by she, her, hers pronouns. And Dr. Lisa, we are maybe a little over a week, almost the midpoint of June, which is Pride Month here
Yep.
in the
Yep.
United States. And so there's always lots of important topics to talk about regarding these particular identity groups. So, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm melting, but that's okay. I did just get my ballot for the Colorado primary because June is
Yes.
also a month of primaries. So, all you people out there, if your
Hmm.
primary is yet to come, please, please, please vote.
Yes, same here. They had to reissue our ballots here in Maryland because there was a mistake on them. But fortunately, there was plenty enough time to do it, and we turn out quite well when it comes to early voting and mail-ins. And so they had plenty of time to fix it, actually. I mean, I know they don't want to make a mistake, obviously, but even with the mistake, we got plenty of time. So we're in good
Yeah.
shape over here. Yeah. All right, well, let's get into our word of the week. All right, so Dr. Lisa knows this, but maybe some of our newer listeners may not know this. Even though I am an ally to the LGBTQ plus communities, I have a good swath of knowledge around many topics because my dissertation was around LGBT college students and their spiritual development and coming out processes. So it's always a kind of line of mental research that I'm always building upon from that doctoral experience. And so, Lisa, if a word comes past me, not to say that I know all language around the LGBTQ plus communities, but I know a good bit, or at least know the base language before a prefix or a suffix is changed to it. And so when I saw this particular word, I'm like, ooh, I love when I get to add to my knowledge. I was not aware of this one. And this word is, if I can pronounce it correctly, abromantic or abromantic. And it's an adjective, Lisa, where it describes a person whose romantic orientation is highly fluid or changing over time. And an abro-romantic person experiences their romantic attraction as shifting among romantic orientations. So for instance, it may shift from homo-romantic to hetero-romantic to biromantic, so forth and so on. And Lisa, I appreciated that as I happen to be looking at yet another LGBTQ plus glossary, this is one of those words I literally had never seen before, but yet I so deeply appreciated how it's not quite a sliding scale, but the nuance and the prerogative of an individual to change over time that was honored in this definition in ways that I hear heteronormative people in conversations really get frustrated by, right? Especially when it comes to things around gender or sexual orientation that I just get so frustrated because I just don't know what to call the person from day to day, or I don't know how to refer to them from day to day. It's like, oh, but you're really obsessing over something that's deeply personal. And there's finally starting to be more nuanced language to describe the fluidity of various angles of the LGBTQ plus experience. And so with that, Lisa, I thought it was really important to
Mm-hmm.
bring this up because it's one of those words that's not cut and dry, it's nuanced,
Right.
and it reminds us folks from the outside of their community looking in to honor that self-determination, if you will. So Lisa, I would bet you probably have not heard of this word either, correct?
No, I haven't, and I
Yeah.
like that it recognizes that fluidity. And I think that just generally we don't do that enough, right? Like, you think about
Yes.
other aspects of who we are change and evolve as we
Mm,
grow. So why wouldn't our romantic attraction or the way we think about partnership and such, right? So
mm.
I really like that piece of it, having not heard about it before.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, and Lisa, I don't know if we should tell people this or not because it may mean that we have to make it happen. But Lisa and I have batted around titles for books, and one of those titles happens to be messy. And usually, messy has been considered a not so positive word, and we just embrace it around here. Like, I I think, well, I know I come from this place, but Lisa, I think you come with me from this place around not assuming the simplest answer,
Right.
response,
Right.
description, so forth. And we are, I would suggest, quite comfortable with the complexity and fluidity of a lot of different things. And
Mm-hmm.
so, with that, this is one of those messy words that kind of, make space for the lived experience of
Yeah.
being messy. And I'm
Yeah.
very cool with that, even though I know that makes other people quite a bit
It does.
uncomfortable.
Yeah, because we're so used to, as a country, being
Mm.
pushed into these boxes that you can't step
Mm-hmm.
outside of, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because when learn more about other cultures, they are very comfortable with fluidity. I mean, when you dig into the research specifically about LGBTQ plus communities and you look at Native American communities and other communities, they've always been comfortable with the fluidity, so much so that they didn't necessarily need concrete words for things because they were comfortable. But because we are not comfortable with fluidity, we've constantly created words that box people in. And so,
Right. Right.
when I see more words and more glossaries emerging, I'm not mad about it at all. First of all, it's your community to interpret and provide language for if you so choose. And at the same time, it makes people uncomfortable in a productive way to remind folks, hey, it's not that cut and dry. And you don't get to tell me that my lived experience is cut and dry either. And so I like how this word is a little bossy. That's a good thing.
I love that. A little bossy.
Just a little bossy. Like, you're not going to tell me what I can be at any given moment. So yeah, so let's add that one to our lexicon here. Abromantic or abromantic as our new adjective. All right, so let's get into phase one. So, Dr. Lisa, let me tell you, 15 years ago, even 12 years ago, when we were expecting both of the boys, we were very, how can I say? We were very okay with not either having the gender or knowing the gender or just getting really excited and making a big hoopla about gender. We wanted healthy babies. That's pretty much it. There had been a bit of a history, not with myself, but with others in the family of having pretty traumatic losses of
Mm-hmm.
babies. And so we were just grateful for healthy
Yeah.
babies. Now, if
Mm-hmm.
we found out, it wasn't like spoiling anything, but it wasn't the priority. The gender was not a priority for us. Health was the priority for us. And so with that, I have always been fascinated by how more and more lavish, detailed, uh, the production of these gender reveal parties have become.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, it's like they're hiring vendors for this stuff, like it's a wedding, or I think that's too
Yeah.
much even for a wedding, but maybe I'm a little more minimalist. But these gender reveal parties are literally getting out of hand. And let
Mm-hmm.
me tell you what happened with one of them. This is a very important story, and I didn't even know how deep this was going to go until I started reading. So there was an expectant couple with several children and loved ones at their gender reveal party in California. And they wanted to have a little fun with some pyrotechnics here. We're going to have, some sparklers and, all kinds of other things going on, right? We're just going to have us a good time. Okay, no judgment. Do your thing. But they lit the device, and what was supposed to happen was that the smoke color that comes from the device is supposed to be either blue for a boy or pink for a girl. Very stereotypical. That's another podcast, but
Yep. Yep.
I see you nodding your head. That's definitely another podcast. But it was supposed to ignite blue for a boy, pink for a girl. And it just went crazy. The fire just got out of hand. Families started grabbing water bottles and throwing it over into the flames, thinking that that was going to do something. And this gender reveal pyrotechnic mishap turns into a fire that burned. It burned for a couple of months, y'all, until eventually it
Oh
scorched
my.
23,000 acres. And a firefighter actually died in this fire. I mean, that's how out of hand this got. Okay. So the couple pled guilty to criminal charges in connection with causing the fire and the death of the firefighter. The gentleman's name is Charles Morton. All this happened in 2024, right? Now, here we are in 2026, and we're looking at what? The emerging lawsuits from all of this happening, right? So, the three companies that designed and imported and marketed the smoke bombs with the pink or blue colors, they agreed to settle a federal lawsuit filed by the government in 2023. And they also agreed to pay more than $4 million for U.S. Forest Service costs and damage to that federal land that burned up, right? So it's more common that those lawsuits are against utility companies or
Mm-hmm.
others for negligence, but it's much
Mm-hmm.
less common that something like this happens where the
Right.
manufacturer faces the lawsuit because their role is a bit more indirect. I mean, they're not there
Yeah.
like, it wasn't like the device did not perform as it was intended to.
Right.
It
Right.
performed exactly how it was intended to.
Mm-hmm.
And so, interestingly enough, here's a little bit more of the detail here. It's much less common for manufacturers to face those types of lawsuits. And at the same time, it requires consumers, hello, common sense, like the couple, to use the product in conditions that won't lead to a freaking wildfire. Like if you have a
Yeah.
drought in
Yeah.
your area, then why are you? Anyway, okay, that should be common sense. It's not. All right. So, two smoke bombs used that were used at the party should have never been sold from out of state into California where they are illegal.
Oh, I get it. Okay.
So they're illegal and it's bad conditions and you did it anyway. Interesting. This is not the first time this has happened, Lisa.
Oh my
It is
goodness.
not the first time this has ever happened. And so, with this, the liability piece of things is moving a bit more. And so, I think this is interesting. But at the same time, always follow the money. They're suing the folks that have the most money that are even
Mm-hmm.
remotely connected with the pyrotechnics, right? And so, Lisa, you know me, I'm going to go down that rabbit hole and do a little bit of research. After I read this story, I'm thinking to myself, well, who the hell thought of a gender reveal? Like, where did the idea of a gender
Yeah.
reveal in general come from? So much so that we created an entire culture and products around it. Well, it originated in the late 2000s, and a blogger named Jenna Karvunidis, if I'm pronouncing her last name correctly, who just simply cut into a cake and cut into the cake, and it's blue or pink inside, right?
Mm.
Well, since then, Jenna, the blogger, has expressed regret for starting the trend because of the environmental concerns around it and some of these deadly stunts and things that have been happening as a result of people getting a little bit too creative and
Mm-hmm.
outlandish.
Mm-hmm.
And what I thought was kind of a fascinating nugget, and I don't know if her regret came before or after this experience, but her eldest child started expressing themselves as gender nonconforming, which then adds another layer as to where do gender reveals come from and why do we think they're necessary? Because that may not be how the child wants to identify themselves moving
Right.
forward, and they have
Right.
no autonomy as obviously not being born yet or being very small. Some people do gender reveals later on. So, Lisa, how does all this land on you? Because I know we're not going to go down the pink and blue trail. Matter of
Mm-hmm.
fact, we're going to put a pin on that for another podcast. But how does all this land on you?
I mean,
It's a mess.
I just, I don't know. Like, part of me is like, how stupid can you be to do that in a drought condition and also knowing that it's illegal? But then, like, it wasn't malicious, right? They weren't intending to start this massive 2 month fire.
Right,
And
right.
and then also with Jenna, when she did the cake cutting, she probably wasn't thinking this is going to start a massive trend. So I don't really feel like she
Mm,
has to feel regretful because it's not her. She can't control that people take that action. and replicate it, right? Like it's just to use another fire um, metaphor analogy. I always get those two mixed up. It's like wildfire. It spread like wildfire, and she can't control that. But it is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it obviously created a point of reflection for her with her kiddo. But I don't know if these are big in the UK or in other countries. So I
Oh,
would be
that's a great question.
curious to know whether this is a uniquely United States thing or if
Mm,
it is more universal, more global.
that's a good question. Well, and yeah, that's a great question. I wonder if it's just a US thing or not. I wonder, even when it comes to, baby showers and other things in general, like some of these customs and traditions that just don't hold in other places around the world. And I'm always wondering if other folks around the world are looking at us like idiots for even having
Yeah.
any of this, or, why is it relevant, or, you know, where are our priorities landing in the landscape? This wasn't a priority for me and my family at all. Now, that doesn't mean it can't be for someone else's, but the fact, to your point, around Jenna not being able to control what kind of goes viral and what doesn't, this has been going on for years. Like the amount of creativity I've seen with some, like, I saw one where a woman boxer, had to, uh, hit a balloon to let the smoke fly to see what it was. I mean, like, it's been incredible stuff that
Wow.
these people are coming up with. And I'm like, okay, what happens when things go wrong and your gender reveal is remembered for the wrong reasons? Like think about their kid being born. They're like, "Oh, you're the kid that's connected with 23 acres of land being burned down because your parents wanted to get creative." Like, you can't. Yeah, I just think it's fascinating. It's
Yeah.
fascinating.
I mean, it is. I don't know. I don't like. I can kind of understand it. Like if you're not the using a pyrotechnic in a drought that is also illegal, but the gender reveal. If you live in a world where you understand gender and sex to be the same thing and that it is a binary and that girls are pink and boys are blue and that's
Hmm.
just how it is, like I get why you
Hmm.
would go all in on it and be excited, and you have family that are kind of all encouraging you, right? And it's fun, and there's all, you make videos of it and such, but it does feel out of place now, and I think they have, well, maybe that's wrong. I feel like they've died off a little bit, but there was a point where they were happening all the time. I saw this one that was like
Mm.
I don't think it was an ice bath because I don't think a
Hmm.
pregnant person would want to get into an ice bath. Like I don't think that would be very helpful. Or maybe it would be fine. I don't know.
Mm-mm.
But it was the getting once they got in, like it bubbled up from the bottom, the color or something.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Look, so let me tell you, this is what I quickly Googled. So please, y'all, don't hold me to any scholarly standard to Dr. Lisa's question. But the question was, how is this perceived around the world? Let me tell you how it's perceived around the world. It says, while widely celebrated in North America, they remain strictly restricted or legally banned in several countries across Europe and Asia to prevent sex selective practices and illegal fetal gender
Ooh.
selection. Now we got another layer of it.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
so, so for example, US and Canada, it's a trend, not a big deal. Pink or blue confetti, colored smoke bombs, et cetera, so forth and so on. Extravagant stunts like fireworks and skydiving, all of that kind of stuff. We getting creative over here. Okay. UK and France. In Europe, parents typically opt for traditional baby showers. While informal gender reveals occur among family and friends, strict regulations prevent doctors from revealing fetal sex or for non-medical purposes. Aha, interesting. Non-medical
Yeah,
purposes
that is
being
interesting.
underlined, right? India and China. Culturally, there is I knew this, a strong preference for male children in certain regions. Due to the historical use of sex selective abortions, both countries have strictly enforced laws banning medical professionals from conducting ultrasounds or blood tests to determine or disclose fetal sex. So they don't even get to the conversation of the gender
Oh.
reveal because they're stopping at the medical determination. Australia, similar to North America, parties are popular, but parents must abide by laws that prohibit choosing the sex of a child for family balancing. Okay, we discovered something we didn't plan on discovering here.
No, we did. I mean, and
Interesting.
I know that I know about that sex selection and abortions and how that has
Yeah.
become or was an issue, maybe still is, but I hadn't connected that to the
Hmm.
prohibition on gender reveal parties or just being told the sex of your child by a doctor.
Yes, absolutely. And so, I think that to me is interesting as I recall the doctor telling us that Trey was a boy, but it wasn't even really telling us. It was like, here it is on the ultrasound, and that is not a finger. There you go. Figure it out, right? Like I distinctly
Oh
remember
my
that.
gosh, that's hilarious.
And then with Kendrick, he was balled up, and so we really couldn't see until later on. Every time he was kind of balled up, and then we found out he was a boy, both before they were born, but we weren't like, tell us right now. We weren't pressed. So I think that's very interesting with family selection. Oh, let me think about this some more. This is interesting because what then happens, like they were talking about family balancing, if you have multiples or a boy girl multiple or boy boy multiple, boy boy girl multiple, triplet, what have you. Well, we may have a bigger challenge than just throwing a party for whatever it is.
Yeah, it's a bit nefarious, right? I mean, starting
Yeah,
a
yeah.
multi-thousand acre fire is nefarious but not intentional. And then
Right.
we've
There you
got
go.
these laws in place to prevent people from intentionally ending pregnancies because the sex is not what they want or not,
Mm, mm.
not understood to be honorable or
Right, right.
whatever word you would use to describe that. So that just
Hmm.
feels that's kind of taken this conversation a bit of a horrible turn, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, here we go again. I don't necessarily always want to be a Debbie Downer, but just putting things in context. It's like, ooh, what, I remember seeing, let me share a better gender reveal party and then we'll move on. So Sydney McLaughlin, the incredible Olympian. So she
Amazing.
is, yeah, she's incredible. She and her husband are having their first child. Maybe I'm just underwhelming, but they did something like on the beach where they had a very small cake and they each took a wine glass and stuck it in the cake and pulled it out and just showed the color. I mean, if we got to do it, does it have to be so dramatic, Americans? Like, do we always have to be, like, as soon as it's like the one uppers, like, you know, you always have to one up what someone else does. Like, do we have to write everything in the sky? And what does that mean as far as how can I say, the slightly narcissistic undertone of needing to centralize this for the
Yeah.
world? Like it's something
Yeah.
else if you're celebrating at home with your family. It's not on social media. It's not for anybody else. You're just celebrating in your own home with your own family. All right, that's one thing. But the production of it is just what happens when the production goes wrong is just fascinating to me. So anyway, I'll leave it there. This story ain't gonna apply to me anymore because I'm done, y'all. Just thought I'd let you know. I'm very done. Okay, very. But I thought it was an intriguing story, especially during Pride Month here in the US. All right, so let's go to phase two.
Okay, so I have a conceptual or philosophical question. We talked a few episodes ago about what it means to win elections and the practical choice of coming to the center to pull in a wider group of people. But that practicality, in order to win, leaves out voices on the edge, right? And they're the same people. So that was the conversation we'd had before. And so this isn't that, but it's something kind of akin in that I want to talk about Graham Plattner. So for those of you who don't know who he just won the Maine Senate primary. Janet Mills, who was the governor whose term limited, she had her hat in the ring and then pulled out a few weeks ago, but her name was still on the ballot. But Graham Plattner won like 80-20 or something of the primary vote, so he is going to be facing off against Susan Collins. Now, Susan Collins is your thoughts and prayers Republican who has been in that role for 30 years and is understood to be a moderate. But she isn't really a moderate. She's moderate in her demeanor, shall we say, but in terms of the way that she has voted, like she voted for Brett Kavanaugh, she voted for many of the current unqualified cabinet members of this current administration, and she largely only bucks the trend when it is safe for her to do so, or in ways where she knows that it's her bucking the trend is not going to be the difference, right? That's important context. So the other piece of important context is Maine is one of the key states to flip this November to a Democratic senator on the road to flipping the Senate. Now, the Senate is really important because, as you may or may not know, the Senate gives advice and consent on Supreme Court justices, on judges and other, appeals court, and also on those cabinet positions. And so it's no small thing to have a majority in the Senate. And right now, obviously, the Democratic Party does not have that. Anyway, so back to Graham Plattner. He is a former Marine. He is now an oyster farmer. I am a little unclear on his upbringing because it sounds like perhaps his parents were wealthy and he did go to some private preparatory school down in Massachusetts maybe, but he is kind of your quote-unquote salt of the earth white guy. And he traveled all around Maine. He did hundreds of town halls, and he is someone who you might understand to be a left economic populist, right? So he is a Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, tax the rich, right? We redistribute wealth. He is for other things, but that would be one way to describe him. So, mainstay Democrats, the Chuck Schumer class, were not happy about Graham Plattner. They really wanted Janet Mills. Janet Mills is like 78 or something, like she's old, right? And so not getting the message from voters that they don't want another 80-something person in a chamber that is already, I think the average age of the Senate is like 67 or something. It's really high, right? But there have been some scandals with Graham Plattner. So most recently, the New York Times broke a story where 4 former girlfriends had talked about his toxic behavior, not necessarily domestic violence, but aggressive behavior. He has a lot of Reddit posts related that are misogynistic, and he also has this tattoo that is reminiscent of or actually related to Nazi Germany. He denies knowing that that was the tattoo. He has talked about his Reddit post saying that he had PTSD coming back from Iraq, and he is not that same person again. And so a lot of people have taken that to be authentic, right? People are flawed. So my question after all that big lead up, Shauna, is I don't know what to do about this because I feel opposed to his character and some of the things that have come out. But he is now the Democratic candidate. Obviously, I'm not in Maine. I'm not voting in this. So really, maybe I shouldn't even be worrying about it. But I don't want Susan Collins to win. Like, she needs to go because she is not doing anything moderating in the Senate. But when people in the Democratic Party and on the left generally, people who are more focused on civil rights, liberty, freedoms, and treating people well, appear to care about character. And that component seems to have disappeared completely for the Republican Party in the last 10 years, right? So what does it mean if that is a critique that we have of the Republican Party specifically, and then people who identify with our current president, that how can you throw away your values for such a horrendous human that has no soul? But then turn around and vote and support Graham Plattner, who has all these indiscretions, perhaps did know that the tattoo was Nazi. I don't know. So anyway, I'm rambling, but basically my question is, if the higher order issue is saving liberal democracy and wresting power from this current executive branch via winning the Senate and the House in November, does it matter that he is not a perfect candidate? And not that I'm expecting perfection, but he is quite flawed. So over to you.
Yeah. So does it matter that he's not the perfect candidate, or if you'll allow me just to rephrase a little bit, does it matter that he's not improving what we already have, even short of perfection? He doesn't have to be perfect. None of them have to be perfect, because it's just not possible. But should we care, given that he's not improving either? Because as I'm listening to you describe both of their backgrounds, it feels like what I hear often when it comes to, primary and general elections is, oh Lord, I have to make a choice between the lesser of two evils.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel that much less than evil, is what I'm saying. As you're explaining it, it's like, how can this be? And so then we have to start thinking about that. This reminds me, forgive me, this probably will sound ableist. It feels like the silence is deafening. And what I mean by that is the lack of actual moderate, the lack of very clear-cut liberal democratically minded candidates. It is so empty in that area where it's like, I feel really screwed either way, no matter who I vote for here. So should the exercising of my vote be the most important thing, even though I have, Beelzebub and Satan to choose from, but I need to use my vote. And I think it is something to care about, but I think what ends up happening is that, look at, especially where we are in this country, but even before this presidential administration, I don't blame people who, first of all, have to make this decision, but secondly, the people that choose not to run because of violence against politicians, the headache that it takes. I mean, the amount of women of color, people of color that are just being sabotaged left, right, backwards, and forwards. I'm like, whoa, it's beyond just, oh, we're just having a good political battle. No, this is life or death now, to run, possibly win, and assume any office in this country right now, based on some of the history that we've seen long-term, but especially short-term. And so with that, the silence is deafening to me a bit, as far as the gap of, or the lack of, folks that do more closely fit the profile that you're looking for or that you're expecting, short of perfection, right? And so, to me, yes, we see who's there, but now I'm looking at, well, shit, who's not there? Who are the people that consciously could have run, should have run, but chose not to because of this extremely warm, hot, volatile political context that we're in right now? It's too much of a headache for them. They're not willing to put their families through certain things. They're not willing to run. And so I think that gap is very telling.
Yeah, and I'm not opposed to his ideological positions. I agree, raise the minimum wage, right? Universal health insurance, all those things. My issue is his character. Yeah. And what does that say around so this is personal, right? If I accuse someone in the GOP of being a hypocrite because they, hold infidelity as being a very, very problematic thing, and then they vote for the orange man, right, who has clearly been, has had affairs, and I say, you're a hypocrite. And they're thinking, maybe I am, maybe I'm not, but I need this person to win because I want those policy choices. And so there's a lot more people on the right, it feels to me, who have less of an internal struggle about putting their values and feelings about character aside to vote for the politician that's going to get them the policies they want, right? And so for me, that's the struggle, and I think that's a struggle for a lot of people. And some commentators have been like, yes, Graham Flatner's not a great person. Yes, he's flawed, and you have to vote for him. Because the stakes are so high. Because taking back the Senate cannot be done if we don't win Maine, is my understanding of it. Like, Maine is one of the seats that is vulnerable because of Susan Collins.
Well, and okay, so let's go back and parse out a little bit of what you just said too around. I mean, yes, we know the current president is the greatest example of character flaws in humanity. Okay, I get that. But aside from him, here's what's got my brain twisted up by what you just said in a good way. Is that it's one thing if the personal moral compass drives political decision making a la 45, 47. I think it's an interesting question of if there's someone who has personal, huge personal flaws, and do we trust them or do they have a track record of making better decisions as a professional politician? So then we can juxtapose, which I know is very uncommon, juxtaposing personal decision making from professional
Right.
representation.
Right.
That's where I'm like, ooh, this is interesting because I mean, how many times do we see that? I mean, I know this is obviously a different branch, but how many times do we have, Supreme Court justices go up there and they ask them a bunch of personal crap and then they expect them to turn around and say, well, I'm still supposed to be as unbiased and like, come on. You're asking them personal questions for a reason because you know that they will influence their decision making in some way, shape, or form. So it never gets to be fully professional. Like I am literally a professional judge and I can compartmentalize how I individually feel from how I rule as a justice, a Supreme Court justice. Politicians, that compartmentalization doesn't happen if ever. And that's what it's asking us to do right now with Graham Plattner is can you, and we have very low political trust in this country right now, but can you trust Graham Plattner to make decisions that may be a departure from his personal character, but benefits you or the party or the country? I don't know. I don't have an
Yeah.
answer.
And he's untested because he's never run before, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I
But I
mean,
think we should
yeah.
care. I don't want to skip over that part of your question. Yes, I do think we should care because then, okay, let's say he does win. Next steps become, as we always think down the road and around the corner, holding him to task for what he said he
Right.
was going to do, whether it, mirrors his personal or not, holding him accountable for what he does or does not do. And then if he does not do what he says he's going to do, we got a different vote to make because he is
Yeah.
now, from that point, he is giving you a pattern of behavior. He's giving you a track record from which we then can more solidly choose where we go next as someone in Maine. So hold him to task. I
Yeah.
mean, that accountability piece has always been, I mean, we know accountability is shot to hell right now with the president, but in any way, shape, or form, how are we holding people accountable for doing? I mean, that's what I'm loving about Mamdani right now in New York City as mayor is that is literally going down every bullet point in his campaign. And y'all remember when I said I was filling these potholes? Here it is. Y'all remember when I said y'all were going to have free pre-K? Here it is. Y'all remember when I said you were going to get FIFA tickets? Here it is. He's holding himself accountable for what he's doing. And I know that's at a city level, but it has been quite refreshing. Even if I didn't agree with something Mamdani mentioned that he would do,
Right.
can't say he's not holding himself accountable for doing exactly what he said he would.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
happens often. And so what would that look like at a Plattner level?
Yeah, I mean, he isn't going to have the same level of flexibility as a Mamdani being a city mayor, but
Mhm.
I yeah, I think for a lot of people in Maine and outside of Maine, it just the stakes feel too high, and so they're just kind of swallowing the
Mhm.
concern about his character because
Yeah,
to
yeah.
to bring up, the wonderful Michelle Obama's quote, which I think you posted about in the last week or
Mhm.
so, when they go low, we go high. Well, going high doesn't hasn't worked.
Yeah.
Essentially, right? And so what is it? Hunter Biden is out and about, and he's taken it to them, right?
Mhm.
And I like, at what point are we just devolving? Like, so the one, the Republican Party, or people who are still in the Republican Party, because I know that there are Republicans that are not because of the direction it's gone.
Absolutely.
They
That's right.
they play dirty, and so then people in the Democratic Party or independents feel that they also need to play dirty, and so then it's just a race to the bottom, which is kind of what's happening with gerrymandering. And
Hmm.
so, but yeah, like going high and having integrity and caring about the rule of law has just created a condition where we don't get stuff done because we follow the rules, but the other side just does a whole bunch of stuff that's illegal because no one stops them and they don't care. So that's the thing. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that because of your post about you had posted about Michelle Obama's going high and not going low, and you're like, bring on the low, right? Or what? I forget what
Oh,
you said.
oh, look, I'm straight up Cardi B. We go to hell where the lava is. I mean, I'm willing to go. But here's my point around that though. It's I always ask the question to what end? Because
Yeah.
Michelle Obama's quote in my interpretation wasn't, you know, it wasn't an end game of if they go low and stay there, we go high and stay there. No, I think it's a means
Mm,
to an end. If their rules say that they go low to get certain things done, I don't think it's unfair and I don't think it's off base to go low to get
okay.
things done as well so that we can go back to the height
To
that
be
we'd like to
high.
be.
Yeah.
So it's a
Yeah.
means to an end, not the end game. And that to me is where, if I mean, you even see it in nature sometimes where, like, let's say a bird is flying along and they drop a baby bird, they have to dip down to pick it up and then bring it back up to a certain level. And I feel like the country has just been dropped off and somebody has to dip down and go get it. And if we keep flying, it's just going to hit the ground. And so it's a means to an end. And so I have no problem because we see it all the time. If you have to It's one thing to play dirty and play those dirty rules, by dirty rules. It's another thing to play dirty in order to highlight how filthy the rules are in order to clean it up. There's a means to an end. I'm not necessarily opposed to that.
Yeah, well, okay, so that argument feels compelling and persuasive, and that would be an argument to vote for William Plattler, despite the
Hmm.
shitty things that he's done, right? Because it's a means to an
Hmm.
end. And then if he doesn't work with independents and Democrats in the Senate to move the ship and fix the problems, then you vote in 6 years and vote him out, right? Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, let him show you or not, and then you vote accordingly.
Yeah. Has he really changed as he says he has?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. And that to me is still extending, even even going to hell where the lava is, like Cardi B. It's still giving a droplet of grace because I've witnessed the PTSD that does come from
Yep.
our
Yep.
military folks, and I get all of that. And I'm always that one that's tries to stick to the bell hooks perspective of things, where it's like, how do we hold folks accountable, but then give them the space to count themselves? Well, okay, we not only did we see your foolishness on Reddit or wherever else it was, but you said you were a changed man. So let's see how much change there really is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if we see that the comparison is not that far away from Reddit, we will vote accordingly, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. I knew you'd have good perspective. So,
I mean,
anyway, yeah.
I mean, I am a fan of transformation, but at the same time, I'm equally a fan of transformation as I am for accountability, flat out. I wouldn't, and I don't think you would have either. I wouldn't have spent so much of my career and my life trying to get people to change only to shut the door to not give them the chance to do so. Yeah, I want you to
Yeah.
change, but if your ass doesn't change, we are back at square one, back to the lava with Cardi B,
Yeah.
because that's where you took us. You said you had changed. Show us.
Mm-hmm.
If you show us, fantastic. If you don't show us,
Yeah.
you might have PTSD, but you also might be an asshole with PTSD as well. I've seen
Right.
both,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm cool
Yeah.
with that too.
Mm-hmm.
Hold them accountable. So yeah, the lesser harmful of the two, I I'm with you that I'm tired of even having to make those types of decisions
Mm-hmm.
because we haven't been looking for perfect. We haven't even been looking for perfect for our perspectives on things. We're just looking for better than where we are. We still can't get that.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
Lord. So yeah, yeah. Oh, but that was a good conversation. Y'all read up on
Mm-hmm.
platinum because what I'm thinking, Lisa, is that unfortunately, for we're going into this primary, we're going into yet again another cycle. This ain't gonna be the only place where people have to make a hard decision.
Right. Right.
This is just one case study of many,
Yeah. You're right. Yeah.
unfortunately. So be ye also ready, y'all. Read up, read up, read up.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, that is it for this week's podcast. Please, you can reach us on all of our social media apps, podcast app at unfazed, unedited with brackets around the first un. Email us at info@unfazedpodcast.com or just go to our website where everything is housed, unfazedpodcast.com. You can find both our old and our new shows as we also encroach upon 200. I guarantee you our listeners will like our 250 better than that
Yeah.
250.
That
Anyway, I'll leave it
250.
alone.
Yeah.
I'll leave it alone. Anyway, if you like this week's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with your friends, coworkers, or others in this phase of your life. So until next week.
All right. See you then.